this video the start in a series of videos regarding subdivision design or elementary subdivision design. I'm going to start with the rudiments of coming up with a subdivision layout. In this particular instance, I have asked students to produce their own surface to design the subdivision on. Now, you might think that would be relatively simple, but the surface has to have included with it boundaries and existing services and things, so it's quite important that the layout be determined, because that determines the extent of the surface and to some degree the contour. I have asked that there be a minimum of a 4 metre height difference over the surface created. So I believe that the first step in the process is to come up with a layout that you intend to develop, and then to determine a surface for that. I have put down a requirement for the project that there be at least one curve, at least one intersection, and one cul-de-sac head. So previously designs have tended to be one long cul-de-sac. However, I'm aiming to get a more compact solution in this instance. So I have started just sketching on a standard calculation sheet. The first thing I did was I sort of had a think and thought, well, I could come off an existing road connection here onto a new piece of road with an existing boundary here, thereby and create these perhaps new boundaries around here as I've shown for my piece of land, and then I can create my surface around that accordingly. So that is the basis that I went forward on. So first of all, I just drew the centre lines of my road. So I thought, well, if I have a road coming down here, I'll put a little bit of an angle and sweep it out to there. And that's my main sort of through road that can be extended and what have you. Then I thought I'd like to have sort of a road coming off there, perhaps to a cul-de-sac, although not necessarily. And remember that this is a totally imaginative rather than an existing situation. So what I come up with, some of the stuff that comes before, is not necessarily will not necessarily continue to be relevant. So I came up with my road down here like this, a through road here and a little cul-de-sac off that to come back round, get a second lot of houses in and around the area like that. So that was a reasonably pleasing concept. One of the things I did in developing my concept was I went to Google Earth and had a look at some existing developments in the newer areas of the city, Hamilton City, New Zealand. We will be using the district plan, which sets out the parameters for these sorts of designs. So our design will be based on the Hamilton City Council Development Manual. Okay, so once I had my road centre lines, I'm going to go with a 20 metre at this stage road, but that's still to be decided. I may cut it down to 18 metres depending on the typical cross section that I adopt. The typical cross section will be the same as the existing road. I'll use one typical cross section through this, as I want to. This is an introduction to the use of software, modelling software. So we want it to be not as simple as possible without being overly simple, but not extremely complex. So I will use the one typical cross section for all my roads in this instance. So having decided on my road centre lines coming down here, I then sort of sketched in my roads. But before I put this road in through here, I decided on my section module. So my section module, I want to have 20 metre wide sections at the road frontage and 30 metres deep, giving like a 600 square metre module. So that gives me some idea of how many sections I can sort of put in, and the lengths of some of these here. Although I'm not necessarily working to any particular scale at this point. These are just sort of rough sketches with the pen. So 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. I've got 1, 2, 3, 6. So I've got 120 metres down to there, and probably 1, 2, 3, another 120 metres through to there, and that'll give me 12 sections just down in there and on this side of the road here. Now looking at the cul-de-sac here, obviously I want around about 60 metres in here so that I can fit 2 lots of sections. Going around the corners and things like that, I've got a 20 metre width here, 20 metre width here, 60 down through there. So I could, there's some options in there as to making things 30 or 20 or whatever, but they will come when I sort of nail the detail down. So I've got to sort of have some consideration as to what I'm going to do with these corner sites and how that will fit in with my module. So you can see that the depth of these determines this here. We probably want a depth in here of around about 30 metres, or possibly a little longer. So that's got to come into the consideration of the cul-de-sac head. I'm going with a 10 metre cul-de-sac head. That'll be a 10 metre sort of carriageway situation. So I'll look at how the boundaries for that fit together. I might have to have a bit of a look at that once I've got my typical cross section done. So I have considered, I've looked at the Hamilton City Council design manual, and in the design manual they've expressed a preference for having straight cul-de-sacs rather than curves. But I feel that the curve here is possibly not significant in that regard, and I'm sort of proposing to keep that. So again, then the 30 metres back here determines this here, and I did some development in and around here, but when I numbered up my lots, I found that I had 49 lots. Now, I've asked that the subdivision be 20 to 30 lots. That's just a guide, but I think 49 to 50 is probably too much. It's not going to achieve anything in terms of just repeating the same thing for another 10 lots. So I've then decided, once I've got this drawn up, that I might, just for my concept, draw up this simple little piece of land here. The idea being that there's room for further development in this direction here and in this direction out here. So that's what I'm going to go with. So what are the next steps? Well, I think the next step is probably to confirm the typical cross-section of the roads that I'm going to use, because that will determine widths and things like that. Once I've come up with the typical cross-section, which I'll probably use one from previous examples, I will then start to draw up the layout based on that typical cross-section. Once I have the layout determined, then I will start to look at what sort of surface I want to put over that layout. I'll have to come up with some surfaces for the existing road, and existing sewer and stormwater and water connections will possibly all be in here. What would be the most advantageous surface? I'm suggesting that I think a surface gently rising up through here, possibly 4 metres, and again rising in this direction, would enable all sort of facilities and reticulation to sort of generally flow down to this direction here, which will provide stormwater, water and sanitary sewer outlets. For this exercise, I'm going for a totally reticulated system for all of those sort of issues, rather than dealing with stormwater neutrality and that sort of thing. I think that's possibly beyond the scope of this little exercise. So it's a fairly traditional, fully reticulated subdivision. So I'm going to just leave that there for you, and I'm going to next perhaps come up with a typical cross section and then start drawing up this layout in AutoCAD at this stage in preparation for coming up with a surface. Cheers, see you.